I am here with Adam, as ever, from Plugged In. Hello, Adam.
How are you doing today, Andy?
I'm okay. I've got a slightly sore finger because I've been doing lots of graphics work on a really rubbishy little mouse, and I've now
Uh-huh.
switched to my proper old-fashioned trackball mouse, and my finger is getting better now.
Well, we do not want any of those repetitive stress injuries because, well, there's enough repetitive stress elsewhere in life
Yeah,
for your finger to be hurt.
yes, just look at the news. Any nation in the world right now, there's enough repetitive strain in that.
Yes, I flew across the country yesterday. I'm actually right in the middle of the country in St. Louis, Missouri for a conference this weekend. And let me tell you what, flying is not my favorite. It's stressful. I'll leave it at that because we don't have that kind of time. And we digressed last week, so I'll try to stay on topic better this week.
Let's not be angry men shouting at car buttons.
No, exactly.
As fun as that was. Right, Plugged In, of course, give us a quick overview. What's Plugged In all
Yeah.
about?
So, Plugged In is a ministry of focus on the family. We are a website that reviews all sorts of entertainment, pop culture, and technological things. And we want to do two things. We want to equip you with a sense of what you can expect when you go to a movie, when you listen to a certain song, when you watch TV shows. So we review music, movies, TV, video games, YouTube channels, books, and we give you that content information. But our deeper hope, and I think this is the more substantive part, is hopefully to be a catalyst to help you to think about your entertainment and technology choices through a Christian lens. So I think we hope that as people interact with our content over time, there's some worldview shaping happening there, and maybe just beginning to open your eyes to, well, what does it mean to look at a particular piece of entertainment through a Christian lens. And not that we're the only one. We're certainly coming at it with our, our perspective. But when we think about the fact that, at least in the United States, the research shows the average 8 to 18-year-old spends 8.5 hours on screens a day outside of school, and adults aren't much better. I'm not sure there's a bigger discipleship issue in play right now than how we interact with technology. So we want to help with that.
I would concur with that. I'm probably 8.5 pounds, maybe a little bit lower than I was expecting. But anyway, I mentioned there's all this stuff in the world that's repetitively straining us. And I think in a
Yes.
sense, that's where entertainment, movies, music, books, games, this is where the media of entertainment really can be very, very healing, almost cathartic if you can get it right. If it's not, then it's
Yes.
not that at all. But hence Plugged In. But where would you like to
Right.
take us today to start with?
Let's start with The Chosen. The Chosen is a TV show primarily, and I'll clarify that in a minute. It's about to begin its fifth season. It is helmed by a guy named Dallas Jenkins, who has been the brainchild behind bringing this multi-season show focusing on the life of Christ to life. And we're about to start season 5. And here in the United States, anyway, I'm not sure if they're doing this in Great Britain. The last couple of years, they've taken the episodes from each new season and clumped them together and released them in the theater. So this weekend, the first 2 episodes are in theaters with a theatrical release that they're calling The Chosen, The Last Supper, Part 1, and there's going to be a couple more parts as well. But I think just speaking broadly about what's happening this season, season 4 left off with Jesus sort of on the outskirts of Jerusalem, about to enter in on a donkey. And we pick up there. We, of course, know what's going to happen, right? I mean, we don't need spoiler warnings per se. But I think that the fascinating thing, Andy, about The Chosen is how Dallas Jenkins and his team imagine what it might have been like, for these events to happen. And some of the things you're watching, you're going to be like, that's exactly the way I always pictured it. And others are going to be like, wow, I had no idea that it would have been like that. So this, in the first couple episodes, we see Jesus turn the money changers' tables over. I've always imagined it as a fairly, it's going to be a boisterous event right there, but not one where you literally potentially have thousands of people watching you. But I think this set the stage for, wow, this was a lot bigger deal than maybe I ever realized reading scripture. And at the very least, it's a catalyst to dive in and do your own research, to go back to scripture. Did they get that right? Is that the way it was? And I love what Dallas Jenkins and his team have done. So we're not quite to the cross yet, but certainly with the Last Supper, we're getting closer, and we'll see how far they get, moving that direction this season. I think there's supposed to be 7 seasons, so I'm not sure if the crucifixion will be next season or in the 7th season. We're gonna have to wait and see.
Content warnings. I know it's ostensibly mostly Christian, but what are the content
Yeah.
warnings on that one?
Well, it's gritty. I mean, I think that it's a realistic depiction of human beings, and ironically, we've got Jesus delivering a little bit of some violence. But there's a little bit of suggestive banter in one scene. It's not. I don't think there's too much here, content warning wise, to be really concerned about. I think that there's a sense of tension and of urgency. And again, we read the scriptures and it's sort of reportorial and journalistic, and here's what happened. And I think that what this show does is like, man, this was tense. And one of the interesting things that happens is Jesus keeps trying to tell the disciples, hey, this is what's going to happen. But they still are thinking, he's going to ride into Jerusalem and be the king. And so they're all kind of high-fiving and taking, credit for helping Jesus become the Messiah. And Jesus is like, look, guys, I'm about to die. And they're not getting it. And it's really pretty powerful, that jarring juxtaposition of understanding.
Okie doke. Where else can we go?
Let's talk about a little movie that hopefully it is out there. It is called Audrey's Children. And this is based on a true story set in 1969. It starts in 1969 and then bleeds into the early 70s. And it tells the story of Dr. Audrey Evans, who was an oncologist who went to work for the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, which is a famous hospital that deals with pediatric cancer. And she, being the lowest person on the totem pole, really has to fight to get attention and fight to get anybody to take her seriously. But she is very serious about helping children get the treatment they need. She's very serious about taking risks, or not risks, but trying things and really pursuing research to see if that can make a difference. And she is also the person who ended up helping the formation of the Ronald McDonald House. I don't know if you have those in Great Britain, but it's a place where if parents can stay for free if they don't have money, because cancer treatment can be so expensive.
I don't think people know, but we have the same over here. Most people don't know about it.
So it's really a nice movie. This is a PG movie, and there's not much here. A tiny bit of profanity, but I think this is the kind of movie, if you like real life stories that they're substantive, but they don't, devolve into being so gritty you can't hardly even stand to watch it, because that's what sometimes happens with these things. This is a nice movie. So Audrey's Children.
Cool. Give us one more then.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum, let's talk Assassin's Creed Shadows. Assassin's Creed is a video game franchise that's been out for almost 20 years, which, every day something makes me feel old. And that's the one for today. And this is about a guy who is an assassin and kind of lurks in the shadows. And this time around, it's a little bit different take. It's set in feudal Japan, and you play two different characters. Basically, one is a ninja and the other is a samurai, and they have different fighting styles. Basically, it's a role-playing and fighting game that looks absolutely cinematic. This is a gorgeous game. Unfortunately, you knew there was a but coming here somewhere. Unfortunately, it's also in the service of a brutally violent game, and it's an M-rated game, M for mature. So you get a lot of violence here, and a fair bit of sexual innuendo and some language. And I think, with these sorts of games, it's a good reminder, if you haven't checked in on video games recently, we're not talking about Pac-Man, right? Which I'm sure that your audience knows that, but I think it's still easy to somehow put video games in a totally different category, but these are games that have the same kind of content that a restricted movie has in many ways. And so especially if you're spending hours and hours and hours playing through it, it's good for parents to know what's going on with that. This isn't the worst of the worst, but it's also definitely got some pretty significant content problems.
I guess one of the things is you look back to Pac-Man, and I don't think it's a silly example, but it's this little, happy smiley thing that goes wrong and munching little bits of fruit, and it all seems fairly innocuous. And then you've got, something like the PlayStation 1, 2, 3 and onwards. If you're watching some of the most recent films, what did we watch? We watched a bit of the Bad Boys film, and there's this scene on a bridge, which, to be honest, looked honestly rubbish. It looked like a cartoon. It looked like CGI.
Right.
It was not smooth or like we might associate. And the thing is, that bit on the bridge was still excellent. And
Right.
Ferrari was doing this flippy thing. I think it was number 2 or 3. But actually, the games,
Ferrari.
I know the games are already way past where that was in terms of realism and all the rest of it. So it is worth just making sure you know what it is that your children, young people, husband, wife are playing. And is this good? Is this healthy? Do we want this in our home?
Well, and I think that's exactly right. And that, what you just did is the reason that Plugged In exists. I hope that we can be a prod, a helpful prod, a catalyst for asking those questions. And certainly as parents, there are times that we need to say, you know what, we're not going to have that in our house, right? And as our kids get older, their habits and their interests may diverge so far that we're not even sure what they're into. And it becomes a process of, hey, what are you engaging with? What do you think about that? How do you think that affects the way you see the world? How does that affect you emotionally? And so we're having that conversation. We're not just passively taking in all of that stuff, but we're learning to talk about how do the ideas and the images and the worldviews of the things that we're engaging with, how do they affect us? Because I think we need to be having those conversations.
It is important, and that's what we like about Plugged In. Where can people find out more about Plugged In and get all the fuller reviews?
You can come to pluggedin.com. We are a part of Focus on the Family in the United States. And we would love for you to come check out what we have to offer. We do about 30 reviews a week of all that different stuff. And we have a podcast, thepluggedinshow.com. Take a listen to that as well.
Adam, Plugged In, thanks very much.
You bet. Thanks, Andy.